Hi, I'm Heath with Titan Machinery. Been a service tech here for just about 19 years. Today we're going to go over the Geringhoff pre-season and maintenance checkover. So we're going to start here on your gearboxes on the side. So just kind of check to make sure your seals aren't leaking on your gearboxes. So your output seal or your input seal back here. Same way down here, your input seal, your output seal. Take this shield off, make sure your driveline and everything's good in there to where you don't have U-joints going out. The oil on these gearboxes is going to be 80-90 gear grease in there, and you're gonna want to have this down in your cut height for filling all your gearboxes on the head. You also have the row unit gearbox up here. Same way there, you're going to have 80-90 in there too. Just make sure your output seals aren't leaking, your input seal isn't leaking, and then just check your oil level again in your cut height. Just kind of moving around the front of the head here, you'll want to be checking your gathering chains. Make sure you don't have a bunch of movement going on in your gathering chain links. You'll also want to take and loosen your chains up. So take the tool for releasing the chains. Make sure this front sprocket can actually collapse. If that can't move freely, you could chance breaking your chains if it does hit something to where it can't shove that sprocket back. The sprockets on the back here, they are designed to where that chain will slip if you do hit something and your chain has to collapse. So ideally what you want is you want your chains to run like this. You don't want your sprocket or your cogs completely together, because what can happen is a cornhead can actually move rocks very efficiently when your chains are lined up like that. So you want them off like this so that if you do get a rock to come in there, that it can actually fall back out instead of sending it up the head. You'll want to be checking your deck plates to make sure that you don't have any debris underneath of them to where it's holding the plate up. These heads do have a one-way cylinder on them, so the deck plates will close up, but you don't have a hydraulic cylinder to actually open them back up. So if your deck plates are stuck, you got the one-way cylinder here, but you have nothing to actually close them back down. So what you'll do is you'll come right up in here with a pry bar. You'll have somebody up in the cab opening the deck plates, and then when they let off of it, you'll actually come in here and pry this linkage over to get your deck plates closed back up. You do that a couple times and then your deck plates will be freed up. Another thing you'll want to check on these is make sure your ear savers are not ripped off. So you got the ear saver on each side of the snout and then the one across the top. If they get ripped off, a lot of your corn run back out because they're exactly what they say they are. They're ear savers. So if them are ripped, get new ones on there. You'll save yourself a fair amount of loss coming out of the header. So now we're over at the left side of the header and we're going to be checking the auger chain in here. This is the chain that's going to drive your auger. Make sure your links are good on here. Make sure your tension is good. And then actually come in here and oil this chain too. So now we're underneath the head and we're going to look at some of the knives here. So you got your lead knife that's going to initially do your cutting or your stocks. You wanna keep checking this knife. Geringhoff actually recommends you check these knives daily. You want to be able to slide a business card between your knife roll and your leading knife here. If you do need to adjust them, you loosen these 3 bolts up and then you actually will pound this knife in or out to get it closer or tighter to this knife roll here. If you are running into an issue where you're running out of horsepower with it, you can actually take this knife off the head and that'll free up some horsepower, because you won't The downside of it you do have to realize is you're not going to do as good of a job at chopping, because it's not going to actually shear the stock off, it'll just shred it as it goes through. So that is one thing that you can do if you are running into a horsepower issue or row units plugging up or something like that. Next here you got your knife rolls. So you got your row of knives in here, and you just want to make sure that you don't have, you know, broken knives like this, or that your knives aren't really wore down a lot. The first few knives here are actually a hardened blade. If you try and take the blades from the back and move them to the front, the back blades are not a hardened blade, so you'll just eat through them blades pretty quick. So the first few blades up here, they do need to be the hardened blade, otherwise you'll just keep eating through them. If you do have to replace the blades, you're gonna have to go in and actually shim the blades too. So you want to make sure that your blade doesn't hit your stock roll here. So what you'll have to do is you have to actually take your knife roll off, replace your blades that you need to, put it back on, and then you'll have to adjust your shims inside of here to get it to where you're not contacting your stock roll. Another thing to be checking on these is you got rubber couplers that actually hook your drive lines together between your row units. So you want to make sure that these rubber couplers are all intact and not broken out. So you're going to have one of them on every row unit. That's going to tie all your row units together. So you'll have to go through and check on every row unit. So you'll also want to be checking your front bearings up here in the stock roll noses. So just grab a pry bar, actually see if you got movement up and down that you can do on your stock rolls. If you do, your bearings inside here are starting to get loose to where you're going to have to look at replacing them bearings. Another thing to check on these is you want to be checking your header height wiring. Make sure that your wiring hasn't got caught in your chains or stocks caught it and ripped it apart. So you got the wiring coming out of your sensor, and usually where they'll rip is right where the main harness hooks up to the sensor. They'll usually start ripping the wires out of there, unless something has broke back in here that'll let that wiring harness drop down into the chain. You also want to check to make sure that your feelers are in good shape and everything, to where they're not bent and kind of cocked off like that. You want to make sure you get these nice and straight to where they'll follow the ground. So now we're going to move to the back of the head here to your actual controller that runs your header height. If you're running a Geringhoff head, they're going to come with a insight head sight header height on them. So you'll want to come in here and you'll want to check this status LED light down here. If this is green, everything's good to go. If you got to where this is flashing, then you have some kind of fault code, and you'll have to go into here and check what your fault code is. Other than that, just if this light is green, just go in, do your calibration on here, and then go do the calibration in the combine, and then your header height is all calibrated for the year.